You are listening to the VBAC Link podcast, episode number 78. And today we have Patrice from Arizona. And right now I guess it's September, but it's really hot in Arizona in September still. And we were just chatting a little bit about the weather. And let's just say we're kind of grateful for our 90 degrees in Utah right now. Patrice has such an exciting story with both her C-section and her VBAC burst. She ended up being induced, but how her induction was handled and managed the first time versus the second time is a completely different. And her second induction, which was much gentler induction, led to her successful VBAC. And so we are so excited to hear the story. And P.S., if you don't know what an aquadoula is,
you're going to
find out because we're going to talk about some aquadoulas. We're going to talk about how to induce VBAC for the best chance of success. But first, we are going to talk about the review of the week with Megan.
Well, thank you. And I'm actually really intrigued with this aquadoula stuff. I'm excited to learn more about it. Okay, so we have an Apple podcast review today, and it's from SP0004. So SP0004, thank you for leaving this review. It says, the VBAC link is such a fabulous resource for all pregnant women, especially those preparing for a VBAC. I am a birth doula, so I often end up talking to people about birth and refer them to the VBAC link whenever I can. Thanks, Julie and Megan, for the awesome resources and providing to the birth community. Well, thank you. That's awesome. And you're welcome. If you haven't left a review yet, we love them. We know we say it a lot, but we really do. And we love reading them on the podcast. So head over to Apple Podcasts, Google, Facebook, wherever you visit the VBAC link and leave us a review. We would love to have it on the podcast. And we also share them on our Instagram, on our stories. So you never know, might be there too.
And if your Apple Podcast name matches your Instagram name, we'll even tag you in our Instagram stories. What?
You are tuned in to the VBAC Link podcast with Julie Francom and Megan Heaton, VBAC moms, doulas, and educators here to help you get inspired for birth after having a C-section. Together, they have created a robust VBAC preparation course along with this uplifting podcast for women who are preparing for their VBAC. Although these episodes are VBAC specific, they encourage all expectant moms to listen and educate themselves on how to avoid a cesarean from the get-go. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not meant to replace advice from any other qualified medical professional. Here are your hosts, Julie and Megan.
All right. Before we get into Patrice's story, I wanted to say one more thing. Megan mentioned in the review that that was from a doula that refers us to her VBAC clients. And I wanted to just share a little fun story that happened today. We got an Instagram message from a mother that is preparing for VBAC. And she got an email from her midwife who shared us as a resource for her to look into during her VBAC prep. And she was like, she sent us a screenshot of the email, with all the personal details blurted out and stuff, of course. But it was so sweet because she was like, of course, I already listened to the podcast and I love you guys so much, but I really thought you would want to know that there's providers out there that recommend you guys. And so if you are a provider, a midwife, an OBGYN, any type of birth worker, even doulas, nurses, oh my gosh, anesthesiologists, any kind of medical professional or care provider or doula or anybody that cares for pregnant people, we absolutely love you. And we love hearing that people that have such precious experiences in their hands are sharing us with their clients and the people that they love so much. So thank you for that. And we really appreciate you. But I am going to turn it over to Patrice because I think everybody wants to know what an aquadoula is. But guess what, guys? You're going to have to wait till the end of the story because that's where it's at. But there's a lot more to come before that. So Patrice, why don't you go ahead and start sharing your story with us?
All right. Well, thanks for having me, first of all.
Of course.
Well, let's start at the beginning. So my first birth, I didn't do much research into finding a provider. Honestly, what was priority was just finding someone close to me, like in proximity, and like for driving distance, and that had like privileges at a certain hospital that my friends also birthed at, because, usually we go with what we're familiar with, and hey, you birthed there, I guess I'll go there too, kind of mindset. So I found an OBGYN in Scottsdale that was a solo inner practice. Like, it was literally just her and the receptionist. There were no nurses, no like techs, nothing, just her. I know, I thought that was odd, but that was like
unique.
all I was used to.
Yeah,
it definitely was. She seemed nice though, but very, very professional and to the point. She didn't show her personality too much. And I'm very much like not like that. I wear my heart on my shoulders, so regardless, I still went there. I didn't even know though that like interviewing to find the best provider was a thing, so I just stuck with her since that was the closest. I had a normal pregnancy, no complications, nothing exciting to report from weeks 4 to 40. Since I was a teacher, I got to like keep my students, my freshman high school students, informed of the pregnancy. Like, before we knew the gender, we did a poll if it was a boy or girl. When we found out the actual gender, I brought in like a box of balloons and opened it for like 6 different periods and tried to act all excited as like every period saw it, because obviously it gets a little old opening the same box. It's like, oh, it's a girl, still a girl, but
they're still
it was
pink.
for them, really. It was fun. So yeah, keeping them involved was a lot of fun. It was cute. But anyways, at week 38 and a half, I think, I decided to stop working since I didn't know what to expect for birth. So I said goodbye to my students, and it was the end of the year too. It was like around late April, and I was due May 3rd. So I wish I hadn't done that, because I didn't know about the weeks of waiting and how first birth, usually you don't go too quickly. But I always tell new moms that I don't know what's worse, the 2-week wait of finding out that you're actually pregnant, or waiting to find out the gender, or waiting for the actual baby to come. I think they're all really, hard times. But anyways, my doctor checked me for dilation starting around 37 weeks, and I was at 1 centimeter. She never explained to me effacement or station, and never mentioned where I was in any of it. She just told me about like dilation. So it wasn't until actually my second birth where I learned about that. And I honestly kind of blame myself, partly because I didn't inform myself the whole pregnancy. I mean, I did read the Mayo Clinic's Guide to a Healthy Pregnancy and some baby wise, but that was really it.
Well, most women don't. They don't think that they have to.
Yeah, you're just kind of like expect that you're going to be told like, oh, this is what to do, or whatever. You just go with the flow. Your body will know what to do, and so on. So I think that's really like being uninformed was what landed me in a C-section in the first place. But anyways, week 40 rolled around, and I was still at 1 centimeter with some contractions here and there, and I was silly, and I didn't do really like anything to bring on labor besides like walking. My doctor then said at that 40-week appointment that she scheduled a C-section for 8 p.m. or not C-section, excuse me,
I was
an
like,
induction.
wait, what?
No. Induction.
Okay.
At 8 p.m., which I thought was weird. Have you guys heard of that late of an induction, 8 p.m.? I feel like it's always in the morning.
Yeah, so sometimes they do, and then they start with cytotech, and then that takes 12 hours.
Overnight.
Yeah. So that can happen.
Well,
but the thing that I don't like about it is you're going at 8 p.m., you've been up all day, and then you go, and then you don't sleep, and so by the time you're in labor, which is usually 24 hours later, you're exhausted.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. Yep. So it was 8 p.m. and of course it was like right before Mother's Day too. And so for some reason I feel like it's always busier around holidays in hospitals and birth times. So it was really busy. It was a terrible experience because they put me in triage from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next day.
Oh.
It was this little small room with a small gurney-like bed, and they began with Pitocin straight away. They didn't do any Cytotec or anything like that. They just started with Pitocin at the lowest amount. The nurse explained that they would up the Pitocin, I think, every 2 units. I don't know the exact measurement, but it was 2 units every hour, I want to say. Maybe it was quicker. But the whole 9 hours, I was stuck in triage. I didn't feel any pain from the contractions, but mostly excitement since, who could sleep when their first baby's on their way.
Mm-hmm.
I was Group B strep positive, so they started the antibiotics right away and were faithful at giving them every 4 hours. I didn't know with the IV that it would hurt going in as much with the antibiotics, like, and how they would sting a little bit when they're administering it. And since I already had the Pitocin going, I had so many things hooked up to me that it was even hard to move around with being tethered to everything. I finally got into my own labor and delivery room by about 6 a.m. on May 10th, which was actually my birthday. But I didn't get any birthday cake or food or anything, just ice chips. So, happy birthday.
Rude.
I know. No. Anyway, my doctor came in and broke my water. And I don't remember if she asked or if she told me, but I just remember it happening and it being painful. And that's when about maybe an hour or two later, I knew I wanted an epidural. And right away when it started to get uncomfortable, probably around 11 a.m., I requested one. And in retrospect, I wish I would have waited because I wasn't really in that much pain. I mean, sure, it was uncomfortable, but maybe I was at 3 centimeters. I'm not sure, but it was definitely early on. From then, I got to rest for about 4 hours and got to sleep since I didn't sleep the night before. And maybe around 5 p.m., they checked me, and I was at 7 centimeters. So that was good to hear.
Yeah.
But they kept turning me from side to side and raising a peanut ball. And this is where it gets good. 2 hours later, I began to feel more and more pressure, but more in my butt, even with the epidural. And I hadn't felt that before, and it started to get more painful. They checked me again, and I was still at 7 centimeters. And I remember getting shaky and vomiting, and they had to throw on the oxygen mask a little bit of time for me, but they didn't explain anything to me, at least not to my memory. I thought it was strange that I felt the need to breathe through my contractions and feeling that pressure down low. But my uneducated/uninformed self was probably, I'm guessing, nearing transition and didn't know what to expect for that. Another 2-ish hours later, my nurse came in and checked and said I was still at 7 centimeters. She was still having me use the peanut ball, moving me around, but nothing was happening. So we just waited, and the contraction started going slower and slower. By 10 p.m., my doctor had called in. She wasn't there. She called in and was talking to the nurse on the phone of what to do. She told me that I was, quote, stuck at 7 centimeters. I was at the highest amount of Pitocin they can give me, which at that amount was probably for 6 hours, like stuck at that 30 units for good 6 hours.
Your pit was on 30?
That
Yeah,
is
it was the highest.
high.
Long time.
Most
You
places
needed a
cap
pit
out
holiday.
at like 20 or 22.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so much.
I wonder if your body really just became accustomed to
It's just like so
pit.
overworked, and then your uterus got tired.
So that kind of leads into what my options were. She told me that I had 2 options. They could cut the Pitocin in half, and sometimes that would trigger the contractions again, she said. Or I could just go in for an elective C-section.
Oh,
And that's
and
a
then
big
they told
decision.
you it's
It's
elective
a really
C-section. Yeah.
big decision.
Oh man.
So it was quite the decision, but I mean, it was 10 p.m. It was already over 24 hours over 24
tired.
hours since we started. Yeah, I was tired, but I wanted to give my body a chance, so I chose to cut the Pitocin in half, and that's what they did. I think I lasted maybe 30 minutes before I was really getting into my head. I kept having all these doubts of, well, what if this doesn't do anything and I'm just wasting my time and energy? And I grew incredibly discouraged and doubted that my body could even move past 7 centimeters.
Yeah.
Yep.
I talked to my husband about it, and he was supportive with whatever I wanted to do next, but I knew he was tired, and my mom, who was also there the whole time, was exhausted as well. So I kind of felt like there was an audience that, like, I know obviously that the birth is about me, but, you know, they were there too. So I called my nurse back in and asked for the C-section and decided that I'm too tired. Let's just do this. And if I'm stuck here, what if it doesn't work with cutting this Pitocin in half? So I went in for the C-section. I don't remember feeling any more contractions around that time or pain like I did earlier. I was just so tired and wanted to be done and meet my baby girl. So we did, and we went into surgery, which was a sensory overload for me. I didn't know that it was such an immersive experience from what you hear and smell and feel with the tugging. It was hard to handle. But in the same vein, I was utterly exhausted by the time they pulled her out on the next day, May 11th. So we didn't share her birthday. They were cleaning her up and doing her vitals, and I remember looking over at her and then looking up at the anesthesiologist and saying, like, "Yay, I'm not pregnant anymore." That was like the first thing, which is funny to hear, but also very sad. I was so drugged up and so exhausted that those were my first comments when she came out. But that was her story. Later on at my 6-week appointment, I talked to my OB and asked about the whole thing, and she said that the C-section happened because ultimately I failed to progress past the 7 centimeters. And I really honestly still wonder what would have happened if I just would have rested once they cut the Pitocin in half. And I know, though, it's not wise to say what if,
Right.
Be in that land. I mean, it doesn't change anything.
You did the best you could for what you knew and what was offered to you.
Yeah,
you really did.
That's right. Yeah.
You have to forgive yourself for like not knowing what you didn't know. Because like I went through a lot of that, like not just with my C-section, but with other parts of my life too. Like you really have to forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of silly, but yeah, you really do. And, be gentle on yourself. For everyone listening, because I know there's probably a lot of people right now, a lot of women out there, women of strength, processing through a lot of stuff. Just be gentle on yourself and be kind and forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know.
Absolutely. Although in the same vein, I took a childbirth class, and I knew the statistic when it stood out to me that basically 1 in 3 every 3 births will end up in a C-section. So it was a little naive of me to not be prepared or think that it couldn't happen to me.
But nobody thinks that it's going to happen to them. Not even me or Megan or anybody. Like it wasn't until my doctor said the word "we're going to cesarean" that my mind was like, "Oh my gosh, are we really going to have to do that?" And I thought I was super educated, and it turns out. I was not. And I took a hypnobirthing class. I was ready.
Well, and even like the most educated, sometimes a cesarean still happens.
Yeah.
And so even though you don't expect it.
Because when you're in labor, it's entirely different. Your mindset's different. The environment's different. Your providers and staff and how things are presented to you are different. Like there's so many circumstances that impact how you make decisions when you're in labor and why you do the things that you do. So
I agree. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that was my first birth. I didn't, do you want me to keep, well, yeah, I'll keep going.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a little soapbox there. I just,
No.
I do that sometimes.
People need to hear that. That's
yes.
good. But anyways, I didn't get pregnant again until my daughter turned about 14 months old. So pretty quickly, I think. But I knew I was ready. I knew I wanted this pregnancy and birth experience to be better. So I did so many things differently. I started at a lower birth weight than my first pregnancy. I continued to work out during the weekdays. I walked every day with my daughter in the stroller. I ate fairly well. I was educated. I listened to the Birth Hour podcast right away. And it wasn't until about 6 months along that I found you guys, and I obsessively listened to every single episode.
Yes, we love to hear that.
It was great.
Thank you.
I digested it all. I read more and more books this time. I think one of the biggest things that helped was I joined the ICAN, the International Cesarean Awareness Network, group of Phoenix, which is an awesome group. Highly recommend any ICAN group. Something I want to point out, too, is that I stayed with the same provider of my firstborn. I stayed with her despite that little voice saying, maybe look for someone else. But I ignored the voice because I foolishly didn't want to be bothered with finding a new OBGYN.
It's hard. Finding a new provider is hard.
It is.
It can be.
But I told her at the first appointment that I wanted to try for a VBAC, and of course she agreed, and she was so nice and was like, yeah, biggest cheerleader, you'll be a great candidate. Fantastic. Exactly what I wanted to hear. With every passing month, I would ask more and more questions as I grew more educated about the birthing world, and she would answer them. But around 30 weeks, my 30-week appointment, things started to change. I remember
That's when they do. That's what they do all the time. Oh my gosh. Yep. We talk about that in our VBAC class. We actually have a little worksheet, a 3rd trimester provider interview worksheet for people that take our class to take with them and ask all the questions to figure out if your doctor is going to do a bait and switch on you. Because that's always around that time.
Sad. It's so sad.
It is sad.
But I remember asking her it was the 30-week appointment, about a hep lock and saline lock, and telling her, like, oh, I heard that it's going to be so helpful with movement and how movement's key, and I don't want to be sedentary like I was my first, yada, yada. And I remember her telling me that wasn't an option at our hospital. And I remember expressing how upsetting that was, since I knew the freedom to move was so important. And she honestly just shrugged it off. At the 32-week appointment, she asked me if I wanted a C-section. I was shocked because I thought I was so clear that I wanted a VBAC. She assured me that we could still try, but like, she just wanted to make sure that I was sure. Like, yes, not. She said that she could schedule an induction at 38 weeks if we wanted to, and I told her no, still probably showing my surprise on my face. She said how convenient it was for moms to do that, and how probably, like, I'm going to be so tired from being pregnant anyways, and just basically what a luxury it was to have that option. And I told her no. And then I wanted to wait as long as possible for if I needed an induction, which she said she would allow me to go until 41 weeks. I left that appointment crying and was so upset that she even suggested it. It made me feel like she didn't believe in me or my body whatsoever. After that meeting, or that appointment, I went to my ICANN meeting, I think a few days later, and I shared that experience, and the ladies gently suggested to get a new provider and even gave me names of providers near me. I remember leaving the meeting so informed and like ready to take charge, but also in the same vein was scared and wanted to give my doctor at least one more chance, I told myself. And I think it was just because I was afraid of finding a new provider so late in the game and for like hurting her feelings, which looking back now is just silly.
No, it's a very common thing. That's one of the reasons why I didn't change. I was like, oh, I owe him this. Yeah. And I don't know why. Like, I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Yeah. It's a hard thing.
No,
so
it is. It was really hard. At my 34-week appointment, I don't remember what I asked, but I remember her laughing at the suggestion or idea or whatever I said. She laughed at me. I felt embarrassed and angry and insulted and just most of all discouraged. Like, she was slowly changing from the 8 or 10 week appointment I originally had to late in the game. But I kept thinking about calling the new OBGYN office that the ICANN lady suggested and just dumping my doctor, but I honestly just kept chickening out in the end. Moving forward to my 36-week appointment, it came and I asked my doctor more questions. This time, I think I asked if the nitrous oxide was an option and getting that for pain distraction, I guess. And she told me how dangerous, quote unquote, that can be. I'm using air quotes.
My dentist wouldn't even give it to me when I was getting a root canal when I was pregnant. I was so mad. I was even pulling up studies on my phone showing him. And he's like, I'm sorry, you can't go there. And I'm like, I want informed consent. Anyways, go on. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so I continued with my questions. And the last thing she told me at the end of my appointment was, you need to stop reading so many birth blogs, or in my case, birth podcast stories. She said it almost jokingly, but she wasn't smiling. And I knew what she meant, and it looked like she was serious with what she meant. And at that moment, I was done. I left feeling so angry and now determined to find a doctor. I made up my mind that I was done with her. And that day I called up the office of the place my ICANN group suggested, and luckily they said they had this like little interview session that they do every month, like the first Wednesday or something, and it just so happened to be a few days later. And nice. I met with them. What I liked about this new place was that there were 5 midwives and 2 OBGYNs on staff, and I wasn't used to that. Like I said, I only had that one doctor and the one receptionist that did everything. When I started going to this new practice after the interview, which I got to ask all the questions, and I was really like learning in that little interview that they proved that they were VBAC-supportive and not VBAC-tolerant like my old doctor. And I got to ask induction questions and how they would do that since I was already familiar with that process. It was overall really good. I had such a good feeling after leaving that little interview. So I started at this new practice at 37 weeks, which was hard, but I did it.
Good for you. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. It takes a lot of strength and courage to do that because it's really hard. It is a really hard thing to do.
It was. But I mean, like it wasn't me alone. Like I really felt the support from the ICANN ladies. So Can't emphasize that enough.
Yes, iCan is amazing.
They're so helpful. But what was I? I started going at 37 weeks, and let's see, it was normal. Nothing like I didn't learn anything new besides that I was GBS positive. I started eating dates every day at 36 weeks, which now I hate dates. They're so disgusting. I can't eat another one. Because, the continuous every day, it just gets old. I drank red raspberry leaf tea. I bounced on the ball. I got an induction massage. I ate pineapples and their cores. Basically all the induction techniques minus acupuncture because I was too cheap to go for it. I was encouraged to hear, though, that at my 40-week appointment, I was 2 centimeters and 70% effaced.
Awesome.
So thank you, dates. The midwife checking me also expressed that they didn't want me to go too far past 41 weeks because of the C-section. They told me that the likelihood of having a VBAC goes down the further you get from your due date, which is not what you want to hear because it stresses you out. Or I felt so much pressure, like my body better go into labor soon, otherwise I might get this induction, and that was just not it didn't help. I know it didn't help at all. But at 40 weeks and 6 days, I had another ultrasound because previously when they measured my belly, it was seemingly smaller than it should have been, what they wanted to see. But it just turns out that because he was so low, that's the reason, I guess, my bump looked small because he looked fine. When they did the ultrasound, they noticed that my amniotic fluid was low, like a 5 on their scale, which I was told that it wasn't great for a baby. They said it was probably low because it was getting, quote, old and showing signs of calcification. About an hour later, I met with the OB, and she told me to go to the hospital later and that I was going to be induced because of the low fluid. And I remember feeling like suddenly worried, but she assured me that it wasn't urgent, like I was still being induced, like I didn't have to go right away. I could get my daughter to my in-laws and still, I didn't have to rush to the hospital is what I'm saying. So that was good. By the time I got everything in order, my husband and I got to the hospital by 7 p.m. on March 18th. My midwife was there and explained how they were going to start with the foley, balloon, bulb, catheter, whatever you want to call it, which, if people don't know, it manually dilates your cervix, essentially, which I'd never had before. So it was unfamiliar to me, but I was willing to try something different. It was pretty uncomfortable with them putting it in, but you do get used to the feeling, or at least in my experience. Honestly, what was more annoying was the tape of the tube thing or whatever that was taped to my leg.
Yes, it like tugs it down. Put some weight on it.
Yes. But it did start some authentic contractions once I was caught off guard by how strong they were off the bat, but sadly they fizzled out. And by about 11 p.m., my mom and husband were there, and they were too tired and decided to take a nap, which I was okay with since I didn't need them yet. In the meantime, I was so excited and hopeful to rest. I decided to walk around the halls and listen to some more podcasts. It was great. But my exhaustion was coming, and around 2 a.m. the next day, on the 19th, I was getting very sleepy and wasn't feeling many contractions at that point. And they tell you to tug on the foley balloon, whatever that's called, the bulb, the cord every 30 minutes, I think it is. Is that right?
What? I've never heard anyone say that.
Yeah, I have a client that had that every 30 minutes, just kind of tug and see if it was loose or coming out or anything like that. Yeah.
Which really bothered me because no, you're my nurse, you do it. But I would gently, ever so gently, try to tug a little bit, give a weak attempt, and then I'd give up. My nurse came in probably an hour later at 3 a.m. and it was ready to come out because she pulled it right out, and
nice.
That also didn't feel great.
Oh no.
But the good news is that it put me to a 6 centimeter, so I was jazzed. Because
that's awesome, because that's actually not super common.
It's not common for Foley induction. It's usually 4. Usually it gets 3 to 4. Mm-hmm. So getting to a 6 is a big deal.
I don't think I mentioned I was at a 2 centimeters. Did I say that? I don't think I did.
You're at 2?
Yeah, I was at a 2, and I did. I'm 70% effaced. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that effacement is probably what helped you get, because the more effaced you are, the faster that Foley bulb is going to work for you. Yep. And the faster you just dilate generally.
Well, so I was thankful for the balloon, bulb, whatever, but The problem with the Foley bulb is that it does dilate you, but it's almost false in that your body then needs to build up the intensity and the strength of size 6 centimeter contractions.
So you can stay there and hang out at like 6 or even go back to a 5 for a little bit while your body tries to catch up with all of it.
Oof, yeah. That's
sometimes it goes, sometimes it just keeps going on, but it's not uncommon to just kind of wait and hang out there for a little bit.
Well, I was there for a while.
Okay.
Thankfully, I got a nap from about 3 a.m. to 6:30, and it was wonderful. And they even offered me breakfast afterwards, and I was so excited.
You got to eat when you were 6 centimeters? That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. It was a good hospital. I'm really glad that my doctors worked with it.
And was this in Phoenix or Scottsdale?
This was actually in Surprise.
Oh, Surprise. I know where that is.
Yeah. Surprise.
Surprise. Surprise.
So, where was I? Yeah, I got to eat, and my contractions by then, like early morning or later morning, were slow, not painful. So after eating, I walked, I bounced, I waited for them to grow. They didn't. So around noon, they broke my water, which feels awful. And after that, they started the Pitocin, and they said they were going to slowly build it up. And I think by the end, I was only at like a 15 or a 16 units instead of 30, like my first induction. It wasn't until 4 p.m. that my contractions really started to get painful, where I felt like the need to breathe through them. I took an online birthing class called Birth It Up from an instructor who's a mom and a labor and delivery nurse, and she suggested being like a limp Raggedy Ann doll and to keep all your muscles loose, and I did my best, but it was so painful. This hospital I was in was different from my previous birth, and they offered nitrous oxide, and at that point, around 4, I asked for it, but I didn't honestly find it too helpful, but more distracting. It made me feel fuzzy and kind of high, I guess. But I don't know. I was just willing to do something besides like jump for the epidural like I did in my previous birth. What was awesome, getting to the aquadoula, about this hospital was that they had these big laboring type pools called aquadoulas, and they are essentially a continuously heated little round pool. No one can give birth in it, but we knew that the water is known for being like nature's epidural, as they say. So it was nice to have that option. So continuously heated. It was ready since that morning. So I, unfortunately, I think I waited too long because I did not want to move. I was in so much pain that I didn't want to leave the throne position I was in. The thought of moving to that pool was absurd. And actually I had to use the restroom and I had to pee. So when I forced myself to get up to go pee, it was agonizing. And I just remember looking in the pool and thinking there's no way I'm getting in that right now.
No aquadoula for you.
So sadly, I never used it, but it was an option. So I think that'd be nice, probably great if you're having a home birth since it's continuously heated.
Yep. That would be a nice option.
Right. It's a good size too. Google it.
I'm going to.
By 5 p.m., by 5 p.m., an hour later, I was in immense pain. And I think I did a good job hiding it because my mom and my husband both didn't think I was in much pain since I held kind of my moans in and was silent most of the time. I then begged my nurse to check me since I thought it had been a while. She then took her time. I think she did it on purpose, trying to me to get to go a little further. But when she did, she told me I was at 7 centimeters. So it took so long just to go 1 centimeter, but it was such an important centimeter to me since it's where I failed to progress from my first birth. Because of the intensity and the horrible pain of transition, I kept telling my husband, I don't want to do this. I told my nurse that, and then I wanted my epidural now. My husband also, side note, thought when I said I don't want to do this, that just meant I want a C-section and be done with the pain, which is not what I meant. I just meant that I didn't want to feel the pain anymore.
It's hard to clarify when you're in labor.
After the birth.
Good.
Yes, wise man. Anyways, it took a long hour for the anesthesiologist to come in and for me to get another bag of fluids in me, but I'm not sure how far along I was after that hour, but it was such intense pain. I didn't expect so much pain in my back especially, but the epidural was magic and it helped me relax. It was different from my first because I still did feel the contractions, it was still slightly painful, but they were definitely uncomfortable, but not like the extent of obviously feeling them without an epidural. 30 minutes later, only 30 minutes later, my midwife came in and checked me and said I was at 9.5 centimeters, and I almost cried.
Yay!
It was great. I was almost there. She reported that my cervix was still high, so they gave me another 45 minutes before it was time to push, and that 45 minutes passed so quickly. I pushed for about 30 minutes, and I had no idea what to expect for that portion. That's another area I think I could have been more informed about, because I feel like you focus so much, or I focus so much on the contractions. That's like, oh yeah, you got to still like do that pushing thing. So I relied heavily on the direction of my nurses and midwives, and was astounded with how exhausting pushing was. I wasn't prepared for all the energy I put into it, but I was determined, and a very encouraging nurses that cheered me on. By 8:09, he was born and on my test. I hadn't had that with the C-section, and I didn't know what to do besides just talk to him so he'd be familiar and with my voice and the new environment. They told me I had a second-degree tear, and shortly after giving birth, I vomited. I don't remember much, but I was told I vomited. I think I don't remember much because I was so excited and I couldn't believe I did it. Like, I think I just kept repeating, I did it. I did it. Like,
That's what
amazing.
I did. My first one. Like, for like 20 minutes. Like, just looking at everyone.
Where's my medal? Where's my stamp?
No, right?
So, other than that, the recovery was good, and we only stayed for 24 hours after it was born. We were ready to be home. It was an amazing experience.
That is so
incredible.
incredible. So tell me, how long was it from the time when they put the Foley bulb in until the baby was born?
Almost exactly 24 hours.
All right.
So it did take some time. Like,
yeah.
It didn't, like I said, it started out contractions quickly, which was a little surprising, and they came on really well, but they fizzled out, and they fizzled out for like 13, 14 hours, like a long time. So then after that, they're like, okay, well, you're not getting the contractions that we want. We're going to start the Pitocin. And once they started the Pitocin, I think it was only about 8 hours on that compared to the 26, 27. So quite a difference.
Well, you know, there's a lot of benefits of, especially with VBAC, of doing a nice, slow, gentle induction. One of the benefits is it actually reduces your risk of uterine rupture. Any induction raises your risk of uterine rupture just a little bit, but the lower and slower you can go, the better, because it's going to warm your cervix up. It's not going to like shoot out of the gate contracting at like 20 miles an hour, or 20 miles an hour. That's not even very fast. 500 miles an hour, you know, and just cranking down, because an overworked uterus is a prime scenario for a rupture. So if you start nice and slow and gently, start dilating the cervix, and dilating the cervix, the Foley bulb actually like triggers the release of hormones that can actually start labor. It's like one of the first hormones to get going and make labor happen. And sometimes, like we said a little bit ago, sometimes your body just like picks right up and starts dilating on its own after the Foley bulb comes out, and it starts contractions and the baby comes. And sometimes there's a little bit of a waiting period when the Foley bulb comes out. It's not too uncommon for a regression in dilation to like go back a centimeter. So if you come out at a 5, you go back to a 4, and that can be a little discouraging to hear. So just being prepared for that, I think, is really important, and just know that like it's just the first step. And a 4 is a lot of dilation, and a 5 is a lot of dilation, and getting to a 6 is like the hardest part, right? Mm-hmm. And so we actually have a blog about the best induction method for VBAC, and we put together all the induction options, and we talk and we go through each of them, but then we get to a nice gentle induction for VBAC. I'm going to go over it super fast. If you want to know more, head on over to the VBAClink.com/blog. It's going to be right there near the top, the best induction method for VBAC. And so this is what I want you to do. If you have to be induced, ask for a Foley bulb, but ask for an outpatient Foley bulb. Our friends at Green Bay Doulas up there in Wisconsin say that in that area, it's kind of a common thing where they'll put the Foley bulb in and send the mom home and tell her to come back when it falls out. And how cool would that be if like that's standard everywhere? So I've had my clients ask for that here in Utah, and it's kind of a solid no right now. But I've
had a couple clients have that happen.
Really?
Where they go home. Mm-hmm.
With the Foley bulb in? In hospital?
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. So ask for it. And do you know what? The more people that ask for it, guess what? The more likely it's going to become a natural thing. So get the Foley bulb in. If you can, go home and sleep in your own space and relax in your own environment. And then when the Foley bulb goes out, head on back into the hospital to keep moving things along.
And you really don't, to interject for a second, you really don't feel it that much either. Like once it's in, you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, when
it's a little uncomfortable.
Putting it in, yes, you feel it.
Yeah.
Them taking them out, yes, you feel it. But
it wasn't uncomfortable for me at all. The one thing that was kind of hard is it was a little bit overfilled, like with saline. And so, like, I just felt like, the pressure. But, like, it wasn't uncomfortable. It didn't bug me.
Yeah.
So
do that. And then if you can't, obviously go home, hang out in the hospital, but wait until it comes out. And then when the Foley bulb falls out, hopefully labor's picking up on its own. But if you do need a little extra nudge, ask your provider to start Pitocin on a low dose and up it slowly. Did you know that standard procedure actually for Pitocin is starting it out at 2 milliunits per hour? I hope I'm saying that right, milliunit per hour, some kind of unit per hour, and then increasing it by 2 every 30 minutes. But it takes your body 45 minutes to catch up with the amount to get the full impact of the dose that was administered. So really, the way you're contracting in the moment is based on the strength of Pitocin you were giving 2 rounds ago. And so it can actually prematurely increase your uterine intensity, too much. So ask for it to be increased by 1 every 45 minutes to an hour, and do it nice and slow, or even longer than that, and get your body slowly in that labor rhythm, and so it can pick up things on its own. Because the less Pitocin you have, the less likely you are, again, for uterine rupture, but also the less likely your uterus is going to just tucker out on you and become overworked and tired. It's sometimes hard to go through that long of a labor, but man, I think where we get hung up the most with induction is people expecting too much so quickly. And I've seen a lot of success, especially with VBAC and nice and gentle induction. So again, head over to our blog, thevbaclink.com/blog. Look for the blog called The Best Induction for VBAC. And then head over to our Instagram post today. We're going to have a beautiful picture of Patrice with her VBAC baby. And I want you to comment in the comment section, like, were you induced? How did you get induced? How did you feel like it went? Did you have a long induction? We're going to start a discussion thread over on our Instagram and on our Facebook pages. So head over there, find Patrice's episode, and join in on the discussion, because we're gonna learn a lot over there today. Thank you so much, Patrice, for sharing your story with us. I'm so excited you got your VBAC. I'm so excited you were surprised in surprise. What's the name of that hospital? Do you want to shout it out? Because I feel like the more we can recommend.
Of course, yeah. So if you're in the Phoenix area, which by the way, I drove 30 minutes for my appointment.
Phoenix is huge.
It was, It's Banner Del E Webb Hospital. So Banner Del E Webb. It was fantastic. They changed a lot of things recently within the past few years to make it more birthing friendly and have birthing suites and
aquadoulas.
A lot of options. Yes, aquadoulas.
If you didn't know, now you know.
I know. I want aquadoulas here.
I want to go buy one for my house.
I know.
That just sounds great for an afternoon soak. Yeah.
It's seriously so awesome.
Oh, man. Patrice, thank you so much again for sharing your story with us. It was so nice to get to hear you share that with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Would you like to be a guest on the podcast? Head over to thevbaclink.com/share and submit your story. For more information on all things VBAC, including online and in-person VBAC classes, the VBAC blog, and Julie and Megan's bios, head over to thevbaclink.com. Congratulations on starting your journey of learning and discovery with the VBAC Link.